Hello and welcome to this BeamNG video. Today we are taking a look at this rally stage. I was playing this and I found this to be a lot of fun. So what I thought was an interesting challenge would be to take some of the normal road vehicles that you have in BeamNG and see how well they perform. So what we're going to do today is throw a hell of a lot of different cars at this track and we see how they perform. So we're starting with the Miramar, and I chose the version of each car that fits performance category 4, performance category that's decided by Beam, just to make it fair, basically. And yeah, that meant that we have this car to represent or this version to represent the Miramar. I would give each car a few tries until I set a decent run without too many mistakes. So that's the run that we're looking at now for Miramar. This corner is incredibly nasty. The Miramar actually takes it pretty well because it's downhill, and if your car is a little bit too heavy, then it's gonna struggle a lot with getting stopped there. And the corner is on gravel, so you have to slow down a lot. The track has quite a few of these quite sharp turns as well, which makes it interesting, and even some of these sharp turns that then turn into an uphill, so you don't actually have much speed going into that uphill. That really tests the traction of the car that you have. There's also quite a lot of straight parts that really test the top speed of your car, and they turn into braking zones, like here, for example. I hit the railing on that one, but it didn't really hurt my time, so I'll take that. Um, so yeah, this track is a really good test of just about everything. Like it has straight parts, it has some really sharp corners, like we're gonna find here. Don't take this perfectly, but in the end, none of the cars go through that corner very fast. I think the Miramar is a pretty decent, like all-round vehicle. It's not too fast. It doesn't go too fast out of the corners. It's rear-wheel drive, so it's struggling a little bit for traction. But that's what we're gonna find with all of these road vehicles on a quite slippery track, I have to say. But yeah, the Miramar just feels quite sensible. Like it's quite. It doesn't feel so heavy. It's quite light, I think, and yeah, it just drives nicely. It handles well. Um, hard to keep in a straight line sometimes if you're putting the power down, but overall just feels sensible, really. Not very fast though, but actually sometimes it's the more sensible vehicles that actually set the best times, even if they aren't too fast. And this is where the track ends. One last jump into a downhill where we can gain a lot of speed. So it also tests the vehicle's ability to corner at speed over slightly bumpy terrain actually. So what we do then is the last jump, and we stop the timer when we hit the barrier at the end, and it ramps itself into a 3 minutes and 9.234 seconds, which is now the time to beat. And what are we going to try to beat it with? We are now racing the ETK I Series. Once again, a fairly sensible car, a little bit heavier maybe, but it has good power, and it's a little bit slow out of corners, like this, for example. But it should really excel on the straights, as you can see here, maybe. The speed of this thing is really quite high, and it has pretty decent brakes, pretty decent handling, so yeah, it makes it through the course pretty well. Here we are at the last corner, and it's taking it really fast. I mean, as expected, maybe. It's really quite a fast car. What's it gonna be though? What's the time gonna be? It's gonna be a 3 minutes 10 seconds, which is actually slower, about a second slower than the Miramar. So it doesn't take first place. Next up is the Gevril D Series. This configuration is rear-wheel drive, and it's pretty heavy. This car, and it's it's basically an ungainly boat. It's not great, honestly. It's really slow up hills. It's kind of painful. So the time that it sets is a 3 minute 59 seconds, which is insanely slow. It was absolutely garbage. So moving on to something more fun, the Pikulina. This one is actually in Performance Class 3, because there is no version of this car that's exactly Performance Class 4. But I think it's super small and very nimble, so I thought maybe this actually stands a chance. Unfortunately, it's quite underpowered, but at least it has a police livery, so that definitely makes it go faster. This actually was the only car that struggled with an overheating engine. None of the others did that. And also, you can see that the power is just not enough to keep up the speed here. It's just losing speed on this straight. So the time that it sets in the end is a 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and now definitely an overheated engine. Next up is the 200BX, which is actually one of my favorite cars to drive in this game. It's a sensible car, so fun to try in different scenarios, and it's incredibly slidey, as you can see. It doesn't matter what way it's pointing, it's almost arbitrary. It just slides around a lot. So most of this run is about controlling that slide, trying to keep it straight, because if you keep it in a straight line, then it actually gets off the corners pretty well, as you can see here. But it's quite important to manage the sliding. Also in the last corner, it kind of wants to, but it can carry quite a lot of speed whenever you do manage to keep it in a straight line. Just the last jump to clear, and after quite a messy end, the time that we set is a 3:03. That is actually the best time so far, so it slots into first place. And this is the only car that is actually still drivable after hitting that barrier at full speed. So we can drive it right into the sea. Next up is the Suvetta Bowlite. This one is actually performance category 5, but I thought it would be a good comparison anyway, because obviously it's going to be garbage off-road. As you can see in the very first corner, we already understeered terribly, and that's going to be the story of its life. Understeering through most corners and oversteering once on the power. And as you can see on that little jump, the suspension is just not okay with any of this. However, it could sometimes at least really put down its power and put that to good use, such as here on the slide uphill. Then we have to brake, of course, and hope that the understeer doesn't murder us. Slide a little bit because we're trying to be on power, but then again, just put down the power and it goes so fast. So that's also what we do at the end. You can see that the suspension is just not ready to deal with that kind of stuff. So that nearly went wrong. But actually, we just carry a lot of speed through this corner, despite the bumps. One last jump to clear. And quite interesting to see what the time will be. With a lot of speed, we get to the end. We don't actually finish by hitting the cinder block, but we set a 3 minutes and 8 seconds, which is enough to put it into second place for now. Next up is the Gavral Roamer. This one is actually four-wheel drive, so that should make it pretty suited for this track. However, there is one catch. It's incredibly long. I am driving the extended version, so it is very long and also very heavy and quite unwieldy and hard to wrestle around the corners. So what's gonna weigh more? That all-wheel drive the car has, which gets it through these slow corners really well. Pulls away quite nicely. Or is it just gonna be too heavy and not have enough acceleration, top speed, that kind of thing? Because of its pretty large size, it's a little bit harder to navigate it between these hay bales, and it loses a wing mirror in the process. But actually, it's not doing too badly. Unfortunately, it has a longer braking distance, and it's a bit harder to get around the corners, so that does hurt it in places like this. It just has to get on the brakes very early, but at least it gets out of this kind of corner really nicely. Here we are, hurtling towards the end, and what is the time it's gonna set? It's actually a 2 minute 57.6 that puts it easily into first place. And last up is the Covet. This is the only one that stands between the Roamer and victory. So what can it do? I have high hopes for this one, honestly. because it's really quite nimble, it's light, and it being front wheel drive shouldn't hurt too much once you're up to speed. Uh, so yeah, what we'll be able to do? Due to its nice handling, it makes its way through the course without many problems, actually. And for example, in this downhill bit where you're going incredibly fast, it feels very safe because you can just be on the power, and the worst thing, like the worst case, it understeers a little bit. I say that exactly when we're getting quite loose and the back end is going all over the place. So what is the time going to be? It's a 3 minutes and 1 second. So not quite enough for first place. However, it is good enough for a second place. So this is the leaderboard. The winner is definitely the Gavral Roamer. Even though it was gigantic and long, it did set a really good time. The only one sub 3 minutes actually. The COVID kept it fairly honest, and the Ibishu 2200BX wasn't far behind. But there's quite a bit of gap between that and the rest of the field, actually. And I mean, we should forget about the Gevril D Series. That was absolutely horrible. So yeah, that's the answer here. It's by far not an exact science. There can definitely have been differences depending on how I drove them, but I tried to give them all a fair shot and have a fairly good run with each of them. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully you will join me next time. Bye bye.